Klondike gold miner Parker Schnabel is a man with a plan.
We've spent the last 5 years looking for a massive project, and we just got one. I should be stoked.
Parker Schnabel has just shattered every expectation, unearthing more than $50 million in pure gold hidden inside a secret chamber locked beneath the Yukon permafrost. His crew thought they were chasing just another pay streak, but what they uncovered instead was chilling. Mirror-polished gold bars, stacked like treasure in a clay-lined vault untouched for centuries. And yet, the gold was only the surface. Beneath it lay something stranger, a carved stone slab, and beyond that, a sealed oak door etched with cryptic star maps, charts pointing back to the 1600s. When Parker's team ran ground-penetrating radar, the images sent a shiver down their spines, a narrow corridor leading to an unnatural heat signature buried impossibly deep in frozen earth where no warmth should exist. Within days, the skies roared with helicopters. Authorities closed in. Locals whispered he had stumbled upon the lost El Dorado cache. But Parker, he didn't flinch. He doubled his security, ordered the site sealed, and swore no one outside his crew would step through that door. Because this wasn't just treasure. This was a vault with a purpose. A message carved in gold and stone. Maybe even a warning. Something ancient waits behind that sealed door. And once it wakes, the world may never be the same. Hit like, subscribe, and stay ready. Because the next thing Parker uncovers might not shine like gold. It might be a secret buried for 400 years, a truth that was never meant to see the light of day. And when that door finally opens, there will be no turning back. The roar of Parker's excavator thundered through the frozen Yukon Valley, each bucket clawing away centuries of untouched earth. To the crew, it was just another long, grinding day, chasing a stubborn pay streak. But then, the light changed. Not sunlight, not the pale glimmer of fine gold dust. This glow was different, unnatural. From the fresh scar of broken rock, something glared back, a mirror-like reflection, burning against the shadows of the cut face. The crew froze. Silence gripped the site as the excavator's teeth hooked into the wall and dragged free a massive, clay-sealed lump. The clay cracked, crumbled, and then gasps. Inside lay gold bars, dozens of them, not nuggets, not dust, perfect gleaming ingots, stacked as if waiting to be discovered. Over 1,200 pounds of metal, later tested at 99.9% purity, an impossible perfection few modern refineries could achieve. But celebration turned to dread in an instant. The ground shuddered. A low vibration swelled beneath their boots. For 5 long seconds, the valley itself trembled, machinery rattling like bones in the dark. Then, nothing. Silence. No wind. No birds. Just the echo of what felt like a warning. Parker's expression hardened. He ordered the site sealed, citing security. But his crew knew better. It wasn't just instability in the earth. It was something deeper, something stirring beneath the gold. Work slowed to a crawl as Parker's crew scraped away the last of the surrounding sediment. Beneath the stack of gold bars, something else began to emerge. Not rough bedrock, not fractured shale, a perfect slab of stone, rectangular, smooth, almost polished. Even under layers of grime, faint carvings gleamed, interlocking circles, straight lines, symbols no Yukon miner had ever scratched into a wall. Parker crouched close, tracing the patterns with his glove. His foreman's face darkened. "That's no rock," he muttered. "Looks like a capstone." A lid, sealing something much larger. When the crew chipped a shallow crack along the edge, the ground itself seemed to sigh. A thin hiss of warm air escaped upward, carrying with it the scent of aged timber, stale oil, and something sharp, metallic. They lowered a drone through the opening. The camera feed flickered, then caught, revealing a black void beneath the slab. The drone lights swept across rough timber walls, then froze on something impossible, a glint of metal, ancient and deliberate, resting deep in the chamber below. By dawn, Parker made a call to Dawson City. By noon, a man arrived, an old prospector, wiry, weathered, his eyes weighing every detail like gold on a scale. He studied the carvings for a long, silent minute before speaking. "I've seen these before," he rasped. "On a map. Spanish, dated 1624. The map, he claimed, described a northern vault, a chamber built by men who had ventured here long before the Klondike Rush, centuries before Canada was even charted. Mining records showed nothing like it. But bore samples pulled from the soil told another story. Ancient timbers, carbon dated to the mid-1600s. Parker felt the weight of it then. This wasn't a hidden miner's cache. This was deliberate, engineered. A vault built to conceal something and keep it sealed for nearly 400 years. And now, for the first time since its burial, it had been disturbed. He didn't hesitate. Orders snapped through the radio. Lighting rigs repositioned, scaffolding erected, and the diamond saws wheeled to the edge of the slab. The air in the chamber felt heavier now, charged with the sense that they weren't just opening rock, but trespassing into a place meant to stay sealed. Each man moved with unspoken caution, their tools humming to life as Parker stepped back, watching the first blade kiss stone. The diamond saws bit slowly into the slab, their high-pitched whine echoing off the cut walls. Dust plumed in the beam of the work lights, and every man on the crew worked with a tense, measured rhythm. One wrong vibration could fracture the slab and drop whatever lay beneath into ruin. Inch by inch, the boundary line widened until Parker gave the signal to brace. The final wedge fell inward with a deep, resonant thud. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. Then a heavy exhale from the earth itself, a rush of warm, stale air that smelled of oil, timber, and time poured upward. Tiny flecks of gold dust swirled in the lamplight, drifting past their faces like shimmering ash. Light stabbed into the void below, catching the outline of a steep, narrow stairwell, descending into blackness. The stonework was too precise for erosion, the steps worn only at their centers, as if by centuries of cautious feet. Along the walls, faint scorch marks curved and twisted. Torch residue, Parker realized. Not a miner's headlamp, but open flame. Whoever had walked here had done so long before diesel engines and carbide lamps existed. The air was heavier now, almost humid, carrying a pressure that seemed to push back against them. Parker's instincts screamed caution. He ordered the approach stabilized with steel bracing before anyone went further. One collapse, and the chamber could seal itself forever, burying both the gold above and the mystery below in the same breath. 2 days later, with the shaft reinforced, Parker descended first, clipped into a harness with 2 men at his back. The rope hissed through their gloves as they eased down the staircase, boots scraping softly on stone polished by age. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became, until the stairwell finally opened into a chamber so vast their lights barely reached the far corners. The sight froze them where they stood. Gold ingots, stacked shoulder-high in perfect rows, filled the walls like bricks in a cathedral. Each bore a stamped emblem, 2 cross swords within a circle, nothing like any modern mint-mark Parker had ever seen. Between the stacks, Heavy crates sat like sentinels. When pried open, they revealed rolls of silver coins, still bound in wax and rope, untouched since the day they were packed. And then, at the far end of the chamber, a structure that didn't belong in any mine, an oak door, bound in thick iron straps, its surface so pristine it looked as if it had been sealed yesterday. The door's iron was hand-forged, each rivet hammered with the irregularity of a blacksmith's touch, and yet it bore no corrosion. The wood was smooth, unwarped, immune to centuries of moisture and cold. Along the frame, Parker's light traced a pattern, precise geometric carvings that at first seemed decorative, but then shifted into recognition. They were constellations, not random scatterings, but calculated star charts, the kind sailors and explorers would have relied on before compasses were commonplace. At the base of the doorframe, Parker noticed a small indentation, barely larger than a coin. In the dust by his boot, something caught the light. A gold medallion, its face etched with the same crossed sword emblem as the ingots. When he slid it into the indentation, there was a sharp, mechanical click deep within the door. The sound was clean, alive. Every man took a step back. Nothing happened. The hinges didn't move. The iron straps didn't flex. The click faded into silence, leaving only the sound of their own breathing. The mechanism had acknowledged them, but it wasn't granting passage. Not yet. Parker stared at the carvings again, the constellations arranged with unnerving precision. He pocketed the medallion, ordering it catalogued and locked away in the secure container topside. Whatever lay beyond that oak door could wait. If it was a trap, or if disturbing it risked collapsing the vault, the cost could be more than gold could pay. They left the chamber as they had entered, one step at a time, the beam of their lights lingering on the sealed oak door until it vanished into the dark behind them. Above, the cold Yukon air bit into their faces again, but Parker knew the warmth below would pull them back, and when they returned, it would not be to stand in front of the door. It would be to open it. For 2 days, the site moved under a veil of secrecy. The chamber was locked down, entry limited to Parker's tight inner circle, and equipment crews worked in silence under the glare of mounted floodlights. Phones were banned, and every man knew the stakes. Word of what lay beneath couldn't get, but secrets this big have a way of bleeding through the cracks. It started small. One crewman, late at night, slipping a message to someone he thought he could trust. A single detail, vague but unbelievable, posted to a mining forum that saw fewer than 100 readers a week. By sunrise, it had already escaped containment. The leak began as a whisper, a single post on a niche mining blog, claiming an anonymous crew member had seen something impossible pulled from Parker Schnabel's Yukon claim. Within hours, the rumor metastasized. By morning, the drone of rotor blades rolled over the valley. 2 helicopters circled low, cameras glinting in the pale light, while black SUVs with tinted windows appeared on the dirt road leading in. Men in tactical jackets stood silently at the tree line, watching through binoculars. Midday brought the strangest visitor, a plain, unmarked government SUV that slid to a stop outside the security gate. 2 men stepped out, suits incongruously clean against the dust. They handed Parker a crisp envelope containing an advisory from the Department of Heritage Protection. The language was polite, but carried the weight of law. Cease all excavation until further review of potential historical significance. The word vault was never used, but the implication was clear. They knew. By dusk, locals had begun to gather along the outer edge of the claim, their numbers swelling as word spread. Some carried signs accusing Parker of robbing the Yukon's heritage. Others shouted encouragement, convinced he had uncovered the lost El Dorado cache. A chant started, half celebration, half demand. The air grew tense, a mix of awe and hostility. Parker doubled his security force overnight, stationing guards with floodlights around the main cut. The site was no longer just a mine, it was a fortress. Days later, deep inside the chamber, Parker's crew pried open one of the heavier crates, its wood dark with centuries of age. Beneath a false bottom, they found a leather satchel, its surface waxed and hardened like shell. Inside, pages of thick parchment emerged, each covered in faded Spanish script. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate, and spanned hundreds of entries. When translated, the ledger revealed its claim. A northern vault where the gold of kings will sleep until reclaimed. The phrasing was ceremonial, almost religious, and its dates matched the early 1600s, just as the old prospector had claimed. The margins held stranger notes, mentions of an inner sanctum, a place where no light but the sun at winter's zenith may pass. This was not a description of a treasure room, it was an instruction, a ritual. And then came the proof, an ink diagram on one brittle page, its lines perfectly replicating the geometric carvings surrounding the oak door. This ledger wasn't just a record of what the chamber held, it was a manual. And if the symbols and coordinates were true, there was another chamber below, deeper and still untouched. The possibility ignited the camp, but the Earth itself seemed to resist. Seismic scans, run at Parker's request, came back with anomalies. Beneath the main vault, 40 meters down, instruments mapped a hollow, its edges too smooth to be natural. It was large, possibly larger than the chamber they had already opened. But the data carried a warning. The void was separated from their current location by a fragile section of rock, one that might not withstand disturbance. Then the tremors began. After a night of heavy rain, the ground shivered underfoot, not violently, but enough for every man to feel it. The steel braces in the stairwell groaned. At 2:13 a.m., a motion-activated camera inside the vault caught something unexpected. The oak door shivered. Not from the quake above, it moved on its own, iron straps vibrating with a faint metallic hum that lasted 11 seconds before fading away. Parker reviewed the footage in silence, the crew waiting for his take. If this structure was reacting to changes in the environment, pressure, moisture, temperature, then opening it without understanding the mechanism could bring the whole vault down. Some believed the design was intentional, a centuries-old engineering trick to protect whatever lay beyond. Others feared it meant the inner sanctum was collapsing on its own, gold and all. The arguments dragged into the night. Half the crew wanted to breach it immediately before the void below shifted further. The other half argued to wait, study, and plan. But the truth was harder to ignore with every passing hour. The chamber wasn't just sitting there. It was alive in its own way, responding to the world above it. And Parker knew that meant one thing. Whatever its builders had left behind, they had never intended for it to be found easily. By morning, the decision was made. If they couldn't risk opening the door blindly, they would see beyond it without touching a stone. Parker ordered in the ground-penetrating radar rig from Dawson, a unit Norma reserved for deep geotechnical surveys, along with a thermal imaging array capable of reading heat signatures through solid rock. The team worked in silence as they maneuvered the heavy equipment into position, cables snaking across the vault floor. Each sweep was another breath held, the monitors flickering with ghostly shapes that hinted at something waiting just out of sight. The radar sweep painted a picture the naked eye could never see. Beyond the oak door lay a narrow, linear corridor, its stone walls perfectly parallel, running deep into the bedrock. It wasn't just a hollow, it was a constructed passage, hidden for centuries behind the sealed vault. When Parker overlaid the data from thermal imaging, the team froze. There was heat radiating from the far end of the corridor, steady, localized, and impossible in the permafrost-choked depths of the Yukon. No machinery could account for it. No natural fissure could produce it. Something in there was generating warmth on its own. Survey crews widened their search, locating what seemed to be a secondary access route, a tunnel from the surface that angled down toward the same coordinates. But when they reached it, they found nothing but collapsed rock. As if someone had deliberately destroyed the approach, there would be no easy back door. Back in camp, the ledger lay open on the table. Pages weighted with field stones to keep the brittle parchment from curling. The translated notes were clear. When the sun reaches its highest crown in the coldest season, the light will pass the mark. They compared the words to the star charts carved into the oak frame, feeding the data into simulation software. The result was exacting. At the winter solstice, the rising sun's angle would align perfectly with a crack in the rock face above, focusing a beam of light directly onto the carvings. The date was only 3 days away. When dawn broke on the solstice, the camp was silent, save for the crunch of boots on frost. Inside the vault, they waited. The beam of sunlight began as a sliver, sliding down the stairwell shaft, catching particles of dust in its path. As it reached the oak door, it struck the carved star map dead center. The iron bindings began to hum, a deep resonant vibration they could feel through their boots. The medallion slot pulsed with faint light, and then came the sound, a double click, sharp and mechanical. Slowly, without a single hand on it, the oak door swung inward on hinges that didn't creak, revealing darkness that shimmered faintly with reflected gold. They stepped inside. The smaller vault beyond was unlike anything they'd seen. Every wall was covered in gold leaf, worked into swirling patterns and scenes that told no story they could fully recognize. Embedded between the gold panels were mosaic maps, coastlines and islands not matching any modern charts, dotted with markings that might be ports, strongholds, or something else entirely. The air inside was warm and dry, smelling faintly of resin and something metallic. At the heart of the chamber stood a black stone pedestal, its surface polished to a mirror sheen. Resting upon it was a crystal vial sealed with a golden stopper. Inside, a thick, luminous liquid churned and swirled as if alive. Its glow was deeper than molten gold, yet impossibly brighter, radiating light from within. The crew stood frozen. No one dared breathe. For days, the chamber's contents were catalogued: ingots, coins, relics, artifacts. Each piece was photographed, logged, and secured. The tally of gold and silver alone neared $50 million by market price, a fortune beyond imagination. But the vial defied every known measure. Metallurgists reported its density surpassed even pure gold, an impossibility in any alloy. Under the lights, its liquid core refracted images into shapes that did not exist, bending reality itself. To some, it looked like liquid fire. To others, something far stranger. When the work was done, Parker gave the order. The chamber would be resealed. The treasures were removed, but the room itself was left untouched, as if sleeping. The warmth still pulsed from the pedestal. The mosaics still shimmered under lamplight. And when the door closed, it did so smoothly, without their hands ever touching it. But secrets this large never stay buried. Rumors swept through the Yukon like a winter storm. Seismic scans had revealed a second void beneath the vault, a cavern even larger, still untouched after 4 centuries. Some claimed the vial was the key. Others swore it was a warning. And though Parker walked away wealthier than ever, one truth gnawed at him, day and night. If there was one door in the Yukon, there had to be another. Somewhere, hidden in the endless wilderness, its twin still waits, and what lies behind it may not be treasure at all,